Turners. I'm delighted. Namaskar and welcome to Page Turners. I'm delighted to welcome you back on the show with yet another book and an even more interesting author because it's very rarely that we get to engage with the person that we're about to start engaging with. But just before we start, I want to share the book with you. Here it is. It's called The Tiger's Paws by Swami Virupaksha from The Art of Living. And if my producer can bring Swamiji on. Namaskar, Swamiji. Thank you so
Namaste.
much for
Namaste.
joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Swamiji has been a practitioner of transformation, which I hope you will tell us a little more about as we go along. For the last 20 odd years, very closely, of course, associated with the Art of Living Foundation. Also, an author, has a background in the world of the creative arts, worked with O&M for a while. That was interesting to read, and is from Chennai originally, speaks French. We'll find out more about that. Enjoys silence, so feels at home anywhere in the world, which I wish we ascribe more to silence in these noisy times and reactive times. So maybe you'll give us a few tips on that, on how not to get into skirmishes because we always feel the need to say something. And of course, he's written this riveting book called The Tiger's Paws, which is simultaneously, and this makes me a little envious, on 4 bestseller lists in different categories. Here's the link on Amazon. That's where you can pick it up. It's widely available on Amazon. Swamiji was telling me prior to this that it's sold out in a couple of states like Maharashtra. So if you're tuning in from Maharashtra or elsewhere, just know that it's readily available on Amazon and you can order it there. And it also has a Kindle version. So that means you can get it instantly in our era of instant gratification. You can be reading this book pretty much while we're having this conversation. Swamiji, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we start with the first question, and that is always the question I ask every author is, why did you write this book?
Yeah, Advaita, I chose to write this book because I wanted people to know the truth. I wanted people to know the behind the scenes that happened while Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar ji was uh, implementing his peace initiative in Sri Lanka from the year 2004 till 2013. And the work still continues even to date. So it was simply because for 12 years I kept silent, and I thought it was not appropriate to write at that point in time because the whole country of Sri Lanka was going through a healing process after the war concluded in May 2009. And so I thought it doesn't make sense to kind of bring up this story and put it out for people who were coming out of the trauma. But, everything has its time and place, and the lockdown happened. So I said, let me sit down and let me write everything that happened behind the scenes when Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar ji worked to bring peace in Sri Lanka. It's just to call. That's it.
And of course, you're a native Tamil speaker. I assume you went to Don Bosco, did your education there. You are from. Are you from Tamil Nadu, Swamiji?
Well, I am partly from Tamil Nadu and partly I'm not. I'm actually Konkani speaking. I'm a Mangalorean, born and brought up in Chennai. So that makes me Tamil. And then I studied French at a very young age in school. That makes me French. And then I enjoy a little bit of Italian and Spanish also. So you can say I have a little bit of the whole one world family in me, and I'm happy about it.
That's incredible. Do you read in French as well?
Yes, I do. I do read and write in French as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But coming back to your own journey this was post the tsunami, where Sri Lanka was devastated by the tsunami, as were a lot of the southern part of India. I remember in Bangalore, I was living in Bangalore at that time, and we felt a little something when the waves hit, I guess. And that at that point of time, we didn't know what it was exactly. But you went there when the people were already devastated. Plus,
Yes,
there was this conflict that had been ongoing. So, can you tell
yes.
us a little bit about that context?
Yeah, it was December of 2004 when I was the chief administrator of our Art of Living International Center in Bangalore. And it was late December, when Gurudev called me and said, look, the tsunami has happened, so you should go and serve in Sri Lanka. So I packed up my bag in 24 hours, and I had been there once long before, but this was the first time I was going to serve there in that country. So I happened to go there, and there was a whole lot of devastation that we experienced and that we saw live. I mean, dead bodies and extricating dead bodies, helping out people, the survivors in the refugee camps that were set up in the schools in Colombo and many other regions, Gaul, Matara, Hambantota, along the coast out there in Sri Lanka. And that was a time, Advaita, when there was actually a ceasefire in existence. There was
Hmm.
no active war that was happening. Yes, there was a very low level of violence, and there was a low level of, what do you say, activity of the LTT, which is known as the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam, which was headed by their chief, Prabhakar.
Prabhakaran.
And their level of violence with the Sri Lankan government during the ceasefire period was confined to some assassinations, bomb blasts, and threats, and then meeting with the Sri Lankan government to bring peace, which would take them nowhere. So this was a routine from 2004, 5, 6 kind
Hmm.
of. And it is in 2006 that a new government in Sri Lanka came, and the then president Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is now the prime minister.
Correct.
So he got elected to the government there in 2005. 2005 November, he got elected, and as soon as that happened, everyone was gearing up for war.
Hmm.
So the fourth and the final phase of the war between the LTT, the Sri Lankan Tamils, and the Sri Lankan government actually started gaining momentum in late 2005, early 2006.
Right. Swamiji, I get the fact that you would go to Sri Lanka at the time of a tsunami. It's a healing activity. You're doing seva, big part of what the art of living does, something you're tuned towards. But then going into a war zone, that's a little different.
Yeah.
And I think even I don't know how you can train for that unless you're from the military or something. I've and in my own life, I once went to Kannur, which sees a lot of political violence, and that was very traumatic for me. Although there was no, there was a threat of violence, there was no live action violence. But here you're going into a situation where it's a warlike situation. There are passages in the book where you can hear gunshots going on, gunfire, all those kind of things going on. How do you, as somebody who's essentially a spiritualist, a meditator, how do you find yourself in this situation?
Yeah, frankly, Advaita, it was a mixed bag for me, let me tell you. There were moments which were quite tense. There were moments which were fearful. There were moments which were mildly frustrating. But what helped me was my training with Gurudev. My training with Gurudev to learn meditation and to teach meditation my practice of yoga. This is what kept me sane and sound during those times. I must tell you, once we were going in a bus, and just a few meters ahead of our bus on Gall Road in Colombo, there was a threat of a bomb blast, and suddenly the driver just took the bus to the corner, to the side, and people were asked to rush, and we just had to throw ourselves out of the bus. The whole traffic had come to a halt, and we were told that there's a bus which is kind of parked there, which has got a bomb placed there, and there were the army guys who were going to come and detonate that, kind of get it off the bus. Now these are moments that can really shake you to your bones,
Yes.
but let me tell you, I did have the opportunity of applying the knowledge that Gurudev teaches. See, it is these are moments and times where you apply knowledge. You don't lose your marbles and just go with the crowd, the sentiment of the crowd. Now this is what distinguishes you from others. So when I went to Sri Lanka, I chose to distinguish myself from others while still being with the local people there, while being with the Tamils, while being with the Sinhalese, while being with the Muslims, while being with the Buddhists. So yes, it was a tremendous experience which I had in Sri Lanka, and a very memorable one at that.
Um, you know, this is where it gets. I mean, we're very grateful that we live in a peaceful country. Uh,
Yeah.
but what do you encounter when you meet with people who are ravaged by this sort of daily violence?
Uh, yes, Advaita, when you meet them, uh, face to face, when you sit and talk to them, I'll tell you, it can be very heart wrenching. It can really, really roil up your emotions also if one is not stable. In fact, it was very sad, very unfortunate. I remember attending a meeting in 2006 in Jaffna, where a lot of NGOs were invited to give strategies and ways to work out, to help out the refugees in that country. And it was very touching to see. There were a few counselors from various NGOs whom themselves were depressed, you know and I had a chat with them later on, and I asked them, I said, don't you yourself have coping mechanisms and strategies to cleanse yourself? Because as counselors, people have to sit and talk to these people, listen to them, and so on and so forth. uh, and I told them, why is it that you're feeling a little uncomfortable? This is based on their feedback, and then, well, they did come and join up some of my classes. I said, I'm willing to help you out on this as a fellow counselor. And we went through the Art of Living program, and they got back to me saying, hey, my ability to face victims, to face survivors is much better, is much better.
That is so true because a lot of times these situations, counselors in these situations, or caregivers of people who are of unwell people, they experience a lot, and they are normal because they're supposed to be the strong one in this situation, but they do have to. What about you? You said your own practice really helped you cope
Yeah.
with a lot of what you witnessed and heard while you were there. Was it difficult? I'm sure it was difficult, but but did you feel like you were able to deal with it better as time went on?
Absolutely. Because the process of applying knowledge and evolving and transforming, for me, Advaita, is a continuous process. Even today, when I approach a conflict situation, I do draw on my experiences, but the moment of truth that you're facing there right now, this moment, could be totally new and different.
Right.
Now that calls for a very good degree of stability in you. It calls for a very good degree of skill in you. Now that is yoga. Yoga is skill in action also. Yeah. So even today, I do fall back on the knowledge, the techniques, the practices to see me through situations.
I found this. There's this very interesting episode, I guess, when Guruji travels to Sri Lanka. Gurudev, actually, Gurudev Ji, na? That's the correct way of addressing. We know him as Sri, but
Yeah.
Gurudev Ji travels to Sri Lanka to meet with Prabhakaran. If you could talk about that particular incident.
Yeah. I still recollect that incident very well. It's one of my most cherished stories,
Mm,
chapters that I've written in the book. And when I went to meet the president of Sri Lanka, was open and willing to offer all help, including a helicopter for Gurudev to travel up there to the LTT held regions. So there were some regions which were occupied by the LTT, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, and there was the Sri Lankan government territory. So
mm,
the helicopter was to land at the farthest point of the Sri Lankan territory, and from there on, there was a path called the No Man's Land. There was a stretch of land. It's called the No Man's Land, and at the end of the No Man's Land is the LTT territory. That's where their territory begins. So I stayed back in Colombo, and I was interacting with the government there for any requirement that Gurudev's delegation may require. And I clearly didn't know at that point in time what was happening out there, because this we are talking of September 2006. And so when they landed there, uh, Gurudev was told that you'll have to now find your way, cross the no man's land, and go across to the LTT territory. Now, this was quite a surprise to me when I heard this. And on that piece of no man's land, there was a little cabin of a United Nations officer. So the accepted norm there was, if anything happened on the no man's land, it wouldn't be the responsibility either of the LTT or the Sri Lankan government, because it's no one's territory. It's just the United Nations and the Sri Lanka Monitoring Mission, which comprised a few members of peacekeepers from Norway and Sweden and Switzerland. So they had what is known as SLMM, Sri Lanka Monitoring Mission, and they had authority on that piece of land. So
mm,
Gurudev got down there, and the LTT made him wait for 1 hour on the Sri Lankan side. Though the LTT had invited and had accepted to meet Gurudev,
mm,
there was no immediate clearance for Gurudev's convoy to pass through that place. So he got down there, and the United Nations official came out and told him, he said, just yesterday, a cow just passed by and it got killed in a landmine blast. So here was a path that was heavily landmined left, right, and center, because that was the time when the fourth phase of the war was going to start.
mm, mm,
And in that year, in April that year, they had attempted to assassinate the Sri Lankan army chief, which they failed, but they managed to assassinate the third general of the Sri Lankan army. And there were many, many, many such events that had happened, and this led to the the fourth phase of the war to start. Now, what happened was, Gurudev said, no, we will walk ahead. Yeah. So for me, Advaita, this is an example of real leadership. Yeah. This is where I find Gurudev put responsibility before comfort.
And courage, isn't it?
Absolutely. Grit, determination, and the guts and the gumption to say that I will walk through this path to save the people of two nations here. I'm talking of Sri Lanka one and India also, because the Tamils in India were very, very affected, deeply affected by the happenings in Sri Lanka. So it was Gurudev was here attempting to save the soul of, I would say, two nations.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he traversed that path and finally reached on the LTT side, from where one of their people came and took them to a spot where Prabhakaran was going to meet them. And the other part of the story, I would like our readers to read the details as to what happened after that. What
Yes.
happened after that?
Yes. I said this to you earlier, and I want to share this with our viewers as well. Is that it reads like a thriller in parts, and I mean that is the skill of the author. I think because you don't expect that, so it takes you by surprise. But these were indeed very, very tense situations, and these were also situations I remember where you said that the Tamil parliamentarians even went to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh at that time, who was the prime minister, and submitted letters, submitted some appeals, I guess, for some sort of resolution or involvement of India, and didn't really hear back. So this was just a raging war, which had every indication, which gave every indication of intensifying and causing more loss of life and devastation. And really, we being the biggest neighbor in that sense, with a shared cultural history, were kind of hands off. We
Yeah, yeah.
we were
And
sadly.
actually, Advaita, it was then I realized that the challenges of waging peace are also very high. It's not just the challenges of waging war. Today we see in the world the challenges of waging war. Yeah, but then I'll tell you, the way Gurudev faced these challenges very boldly, yeah, is something for me, is a learning of real leadership. He took the risk.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ultimate risk also, no, in many ways, because this was not. This is something where he could have very well, and didn't happen, thank God for that. But he
Yeah,
could have lost his life as well. Some of the situations that he walked into, and the
uh,
readers will read that. But
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. And Sudhanshu, one of our viewers, is saying, is it correct to give importance to Tamil identity more than an Indian one? I think that's more of a political question. But what I found interesting, uh, you despair as well as you observe these young Tamils who are involved in this conflict, and you see their fire, you see their passion, you see their commitment to their cultural identity, and you say, if only they had redirected some of that, they would have moved mountains. So there's a sadness when you make that observation.
Yeah. I would like to say here, there's nothing wrong in identifying yourself with a particular culture or tradition. One doesn't need to shy away from it. I mean, you can be proud as a Tiwari from UP. I mean, nothing stops you from that. I don't think we can say, does one identity override the Indian identity? I don't think so. In my personal viewpoint, I would say that both run parallelly. Both run parallelly. Yeah. Now, see me sitting here today. I can say I'm Konkani speaking. I'm Tamil. I'm French. I can very well say that while I'm still comfortable with my Indian identity. So I don't think it's a question of one identity overriding another. Yeah, there are times when you do have to use, and you do have to kind of put forth your identity very clearly. Nothing wrong in it. That's what brings us together. That diversity brings us together.
But Swamiji, what when there are controversies and conflicts even in within the our country over linguistic identity, and we see that in the news all the time, or over religious identity, and how do you navigate that in a way that leads to coexistence and not further polarization, because we live in a very polarized world today.
I do not agree, particularly that we live in a polarized world today. I would not make an eternal statement on that front, because I would say it's very important for us to move from a level of tolerance to acceptance. This is very important. It's not about tolerating someone. No, it's about being in acceptance with certain things, uh, especially when you are dealing with parties to a conflict. It's very important to engender and bring about a certain degree of acceptance. That, I'll tell you, Advaita, is a very, very important fundamental principle in conflict resolution. And one of Gurudev's, I would say, hallmarks is one of his hallmarks of conflict resolution, in my personal viewpoint, is his ability, his charm, his wit, his wisdom to even bring back people from the dead. Yeah, I'm using it metaphorically. Huh?
Yes, I know
I'm
before.
using, I'm using it metaphorically, that his ability to charm people back from the dead. When I say charm people back from the dead, I'm talking about when we are stuck in certain prejudiced ideas and viewpoints, and when we don't want to budge from our viewpoint. It's as good as being dead. Yeah. And number two is to say my way or the highway. This is another attitude that people bring in a conflict resolution. It's either my way or the highway. And I saw all of these attitudes, Advaita, fail in Sri Lanka. When the LTT said my way or the highway, they learned a lesson. Yeah, when they were not in acceptance with certain terms and conditions, or even when the Sri Lankan government was not in acceptance with the terms and conditions set by the LTTE, I tell you, it was absolutely devastating. So I want our viewers to take this one point. A level of deep acceptance helps you to move forward in a conflict resolution. And then from there, I'll tell you, there is a huge possibility of a solution coming out.
One
Yeah.
of Sudhanshu asked another question. And I was also going to bring that up. We haven't discussed the ego in this. Uh, if this is true, if one party is accepting and the other is not, it will make the accepting party look weak.
Beautiful question. Very nice. This is where mediators help, Sudhanshu. This is the role of the mediators. And that's exactly what Gurudev attempted to do in Sri Lanka, where he was engendering, helping to produce a certain common level of acceptance. Yeah, this is very important. I'm not saying his attempt was not at trying to shame one or blame one, not at all. A mediator cannot play that role. And I've seen Gurudev, Shri Ravi Shankar ji work up front. I've worked very closely and I've seen him handle conflict resolution situations. It's so beautiful the way he brings about a level of acceptance, and then he says, hey, listen, come, let's talk to the other party also. Yeah. So I would use this Advaita as one of the fundamental principles to be open minded, to have a broader vision towards conflict resolution.
We live in the era of social media, Swamiji. Okay, one last question about the book before we switch gears here, because the questions are coming now. There was a beautiful, exposition that you quoted of Guru Dev Ji about the example of Krishna and the Mahabharata, and how he went in for peace negotiations. I think it was on 3 occasions
Yeah,
before the Mahabharata to sort of ensure that the war didn't happen, but he didn't succeed. And I
yeah.
think I think that was beautifully explained. If you could again share that from the book.
Yeah, see, let me tell you, let me context it to our daily life situation. When we are confronted with a conflict, say with your relatives, with your boss, or with anyone, yeah, what happens is we cut off all communication. That is another mistake that we do. We just cut off every piece of communication. Yeah. Now that leads to only increasing the problem. It doesn't take us anywhere. So when Krishna went thrice to help bring about peace, yeah, he went by the dharma, by his duty, saying that I have to go and engage in talks to bring about peace. And it was the same spirit with which Gurudev went. He went there because I'll tell you, if Gurudev did not have gone, if he had not gone to Sri Lanka to mediate, people would have stood up and asked, hey, you handle such a big organization, you run an organization, you're in peacemaking. Why have you not gone and tried to make peace in Sri Lanka? That is
Yeah.
one angle. Yeah, people will wag their tongues. Now, that is not the spirit with which Gurudev went. He went with the attitude and spirit that it is my dharma. If my neighbor's house is burning, I'm going to help out in whatever possible way. Yeah, that is the attitude. So I think this attitude one needs to bring to a conflict resolution situation also. Let me do whatever I can, which is within my realm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, Gurudev has transformed personal lives. He has transformed the lives of millions of people all over the world. He's helped societies bring about a degree of transformation. But Sri Lanka is one of the case studies where he attempted to bring peace at the level of a nation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
That for me again, Advaita, is a sign of leadership, that you're able to push the envelope, you're able to go beyond boundaries, you're able to go beyond your comfort zone. That for me is leadership.
Swamiji, the COVID pandemic has really made a lot of us reset our lives and brought about an awakening of the kind that I guess comes takes place maybe every 60 years, 100 years, what have you. So it has been tragic, but it's also an opportunity. Now, how can we sort of shift our own consciousness in this very unique time that we're all experiencing together as the human community?
I would say we now just need to move on with the spirit of hope, and with that deep hope that the future is going to be good for us. That's very important. See, that itself, the moment you think, yeah, the future is going to be good, yeah, it doesn't mean that something happened and everything is going to be bad. We tend to generalize and eternalize situations. Yeah, sometimes that tendency comes up, so we need to be really careful when such attitudes come up. So I would say, uh, just move ahead with the spirit of hope, saying that, hey, let me put my best foot forward in my personal life, let me put my 100% in my work life, and whatever result comes out of it, let me just move ahead with it. I mean, that's quite a page turner for you. Yeah, that's very important.
Swamiji, you said, cutting off communication is the worst possible thing. But then today, a lot of the self help advice that you get is, oh, if there are toxic people in your life, or if you're in a toxic relationship or a toxic workplace, then, cut it out, drop the people, get out of the workplace, change. How do you deal with that sort of toxicity, which we have in some measure or the other in all our lives, and
Agree.
yet keeping the communication and being compassionate in a way that you're suggesting, which could also be a drain of time and energy?
Yeah, agreed. One way to look at it, Advaita, is that if you feel you have put your 100% vis-a-vis the person in question or the situation in question, when you feel I've put my 100%, I've put my best foot forward, it's not working out, it's perfectly fine to move on. Yeah, but not before you have put your 100%. Many a time we just give up even before putting even 50%. Yeah, isn't it? Sometimes we say, "Arey, mere se nahi hota hai. I just cannot do it." But just look back and see, did you make that attempt? Did you really reach out? Did you get a friend of yours to mediate? Did you get that uncle of yours to mediate where there was a possibility? Did you get his or her best friend to talk to the person and try and resolve the situation? Then in hindsight, you say, hey, maybe I could have taken that approach. Yeah. So you have to look at all possibilities. And then when you feel, hey, it's not working out, it's perfectly fine. You say, hey, all the best to you, my best wishes, move on. Yeah. But I would say instead of you labeling a person saying, hey, that guy is toxic, I'm not going to be in touch with him, it's only going to trouble you more than the other people. Yeah. So I would say this is the attitude. Put your 100% and just move on. Yeah. Educate and ignore. Yeah. After a point, if you feel nahi ho raha hai, it's not happening, all the best. Yeah. So it's very contextual. Let me tell you, when I say, keep the communication going, it's very contextual.
Swamiji, someone like you discovered their purpose, found a guide very, very early in your life, and was able to channelize your energy, your purpose, your life in a certain direction. Most of us are still seeking, most of us are still wondering what our purpose is and why we're here and what we can do. What is your advice to the to us really?
I would say just play with that question. Just play with that question and see what answer you get. Just play with that question. Even I tossed and fried that question. I deep fried it. Yeah, I did every possible thing with that question, and it's such a lovely question. Be with it. Go to bed with it tonight and see what answer comes up tomorrow morning.
Well, yes, I mean that's something I think that needs deep work, as they say, deep inner work to figure it out. But in this time, even when you look at seva work, for example, which is such a foundational practice of your organization, for example, even if one looks at it somewhere along, you say selfless, you've used selflessly a lot, and Gurudev's life is an example of that selflessness, as is yours. But for the rest of us, we do something, we want that acknowledgement, we want that praise, we want something in return. Does that then diminish the seva that you're doing, or are you only being human?
Advaita, just remember your mother working selflessly for you, yes or no?
Yes.
Your father, worked selflessly for you, yes or no? Yeah. She didn't expect anything in return. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe your sibling, there must be one of your brothers or sisters who's kind of working selflessly for you also. So the concept of having to work selflessly for someone, it is there in every human being. Yeah, it's there in every human being. But then when you move out of that label of relationship, saying that I'm going to do it only for my son, I'm going to do it only for my daughter, or only for my relatives or siblings, when you start embracing a larger community and get into a sense of collective serving, that is the cherry on the cake.
And how does that happen? We'll have to have you back.
People are doing that. People are doing that. During the COVID, so many people stepped out and did seva. So many people, whether they were individuals or groups of friends or organizations, we all came out and said, let's do something for people. Now, there you were selfless, isn't it? So it's
Agree.
ingrained in everyone.
But that was an extraordinary situation, and one feels like now we're back to the same bickering, the same nonsense. One wonders, I mean, was that temporary respite, or can that be a way of life?
Well, it's up to you how one wants to look at life. One is you can look at it as an art and you can play with the situation in front of you joyfully. You can respond to a situation better, or you can react and then uh, get the feedback, or get a rap on the knuckles. So it's totally up to you. That's where I learned Advaita. I must tell you, in my personal life, I learned the principles of the art of living to manage situations which you were just mentioning right now. The bickering, the gossip, the
Yes.
negativity, so a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of practice of meditation every day, a few minutes, 10, 15 minutes of meditation every day, a little bit of yoga, meditate, I'll tell you, will keep you absolutely well and going.
How does one start off, just for our viewers who may want to start the practice and
you
find
can you,
themselves in that
you
direction?
can you can start right now, this moment. Just
Hmm.
resolve. One of the things is, just resolve to be happy come what may. Only you can do that. Only you can do that. Come what may, just resolve to be happy. मैं खुश रहूंगा, मैं खुश रहूंगी. जो भी स्थिति है, I have knowledge, I have techniques, I have wisdom. बस खुश रहो भाई. One is that attitude itself, that, hey, I agree to be happy. Yeah, that is one. Yeah. And in fact, Gurudev has just launched a campaign called I Stand for Peace. It's a very beautiful campaign that is sweeping across Europe and the US also. I Stand for Peace campaign is a beautiful campaign which has events, which has meditations, which is basically to uplift the consciousness, the collective consciousness all over the world. And this is one of the things we need right now, this moment.
And I really do believe, I mean, India has a role to play. People like Gurudev have a role to play in the new world order as it's going to emerge in the next few years. I really feel that shift of consciousness. I mean, I feel it, and
Yeah,
I'm sure that you have anticipated it, but I feel it now.
yeah.
But thank you so much, Swamiji. We've gone beyond our 30 minutes because we had questions coming in as I anticipated. And I really am very grateful to you for your time. I
Thank
hope
you.
that you will come back on the show. And of course, once again, I want to share the book. And if my producer, great, just if you can put that up. The Tiger's Paws, the untold story of Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's peace efforts in Sri Lanka, is available on Amazon, available in your local bookstore. Amazon is always easier. Although support your local bookstore, but I know for a fact that it's sold out in Maharashtra. So if you live in Maharashtra, you might have to go to Amazon. But thank you so much, Swamiji, for your time.
Thank
And
you.
thank you
Thank
to
you,
our viewers.
Advaita. It was nice talking to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Likewise.